When you think of the Premier League's greatest entertainers, Eden Hazard's name is always near the top of the list. He arrived at Chelsea in 2012 as a young, exciting talent from Lille, but he left as a king. For 7 glorious seasons, he was the spark that lit up Stamford Bridge. He had this incredible ability to glide past defenders as if they weren't even there. His low centre of gravity, combined with his quick feet and explosive acceleration, made him an absolute nightmare for anyone trying to mark him. Fans would get to their feet every single time he picked up the ball because you always felt that something special was about to happen. He wasn't just a player, he was an artist, and the pitch was his canvas. His time in West London was filled with moments of pure magic. There were so many iconic goals, from that solo run against Arsenal where he weaved through half their team, to the title-clinching goal against Crystal Palace. He was the main man, the one his teammates looked to when they needed inspiration. He won 2 Premier League titles, 2 Europa League trophies, an FA Cup and a League Cup with the club. But his impact went far beyond the silverware. He brought a sense of joy and unpredictability to the game. You could see he loved playing football, and that passion was infectious, spreading from the pitch right through to the stands. He played with a smile on his face, and that made him a hero to the Chelsea faithful. The connection he built with the Chelsea supporters was truly special. They adored him not just for his incredible skill, but for his personality. He seemed like a genuinely humble and down-to-earth person, someone who just happened to be a world-class footballer. He never seemed to get carried away by the fame or the pressure. He simply wanted the ball at his feet so he could make things happen. This bond was cemented over 352 appearances, during which he scored 110 goals. He was consistently brilliant, a beacon of light even when the team was going through tougher periods. For those 7 years, Eden Hazard wasn't just a Chelsea player, he was Chelsea. His final game for the club was the perfect farewell. It was the 2019 Europa League final against Arsenal, and he was simply unplayable. He scored 2 goals and set up another in a dominant 4-1 victory. It was a masterclass, a final masterpiece to remind everyone of his genius before he moved on. He left the club as a legend, with his place in its history firmly secured. The fans knew he was leaving for his dream club, and while they were sad to see him go, there was a sense of gratitude for the incredible memories he had given them. He had given his best years to Chelsea and left at the very peak of his powers, a king departing his kingdom. For many of the world's greatest players, there is one club that stands above all others: Real Madrid. It is a club with a mystique, a history of legendary players and European dominance. For Eden Hazard, playing for Real Madrid was a lifelong dream, one he had spoken about openly for years. It was the club of his childhood hero, Zinedine Zidane, who was now the manager. So, when the call finally came in the summer of 2019, it was an opportunity he simply couldn't refuse. It was the next logical step for a player who had conquered the Premier League and wanted to test himself on the biggest stage of all, aiming for the Champions League trophy that had eluded him at Chelsea. The transfer itself was a massive statement. Real Madrid paid a fee reported to be over 100 million euros, making him one of the most expensive players in football history. This wasn't just any signing, it was a Galactico signing. The club was looking for a new superstar to build their team around, someone to fill the enormous void left by Cristiano Ronaldo's departure to Juventus a year earlier. The expectation was that Hazard, with his proven quality and dazzling skill, would be that man. He was handed the iconic number 7 shirt, a number previously worn by legends like Ronaldo and Raúl. The pressure was immense, but everyone believed he was more than capable of handling it. His presentation at the Santiago Bernabéu Stadium was a huge event. Tens of thousands of fans flocked to see their new star, chanting his name as he juggled the ball on the famous pitch. It felt like the beginning of a new era for both the player and the club. Hazard was 28 years old, right in his prime, and coming off one of the best seasons of his career. He was expected to bring his Premier League magic to La Liga, to be the creative force that would lead Real Madrid back to domestic and European glory. The dream was becoming a reality, and the entire football world was watching, excited to see what he would achieve in the famous white shirt. The plan seemed perfect on paper. Hazard would link up with other world-class players like Karim Benzema, Luka Modric and Toni Kroos, forming a formidable attacking force under the guidance of his idol Zidane. The stage was set for him to take his career to the next level, to win the Ballon d'Or and to cement his legacy as one of the all-time greats. The excitement was palpable, not just in Madrid but across the globe. No one could have predicted that this dream move, filled with so much hope and promise, would soon turn into a prolonged and heartbreaking nightmare that would ultimately bring his illustrious career to a premature end. The dream of succeeding at Real Madrid began to unravel almost immediately, and the main culprit was a relentless series of injuries. It all started before he had even played a competitive match, with a thigh injury sidelining him for the first few weeks of the season. This was a frustrating start, but worse was to come. In November 2019, a seemingly innocuous challenge from his international teammate Thomas Meunier in a Champions League match resulted in an ankle injury. It was a hairline fracture that would prove to be the start of all his major problems. That single moment seemed to change the entire trajectory of his time in Spain. From that point on, Hazard's body seemed to betray him constantly. He would work hard to recover from one setback, only for another to strike just as he was getting back on the pitch. The initial ankle problem required surgery to insert a metal plate, but it never seemed to heal correctly. He suffered from recurring muscle issues, knocks and strains that kept him on the treatment table far more often than on the football pitch. Over his 4 years at the club, he missed more games through injury than he played. It was a cruel and tragic turn of events for a player who had been remarkably durable throughout his entire career at Chelsea, where he rarely missed matches. The physical toll was immense, but the mental strain must have been even greater. Every time he tried to build momentum, another injury would force him back to square one. He couldn't find any rhythm or consistency. A player like Hazard, whose game is built on explosive bursts of speed and sharp turns, needs to have complete trust in his body. The constant fear of breaking down again undoubtedly affected his confidence. He started to play with a certain hesitation, a reluctance to take on defenders with the same fearless abandon that had made him so famous. The magic was still there, but it was trapped inside a body that would no longer cooperate. The cycle of injuries became a defining narrative of his Real Madrid spell. Fans and the media, who had been so excited by his arrival, grew increasingly frustrated. They had expected a superstar, but what they got was a player who was perpetually unavailable. It was a deeply unfortunate situation, as his desire to succeed was never in question. He was simply caught in a vicious cycle of physical ailments that he couldn't escape. The dream had turned into a frustrating and painful ordeal, and the player who was supposed to be the new king of the Bernabeu was instead becoming a ghost. Beyond the constant injuries, Hazard also faced persistent questions about his physical condition. He famously arrived for his first pre-season at Real Madrid, reportedly overweight, something he later admitted to himself with a laugh. While he had always been a player who enjoyed his time off during the summer, the standards at a club like Real Madrid are unforgiving. This initial fitness issue set a negative tone from the very beginning and gave his critics ammunition. It created a perception that he wasn't as dedicated as he needed to be, even though he worked hard to get back into shape. This narrative, fair or not, followed him throughout his time in Spain. When he was fit enough to play, he struggled to rediscover the breathtaking form that had made him a legend at Chelsea. The player who once glided past opponents with ease now looked a step slower, his confidence visibly dented. The injuries had clearly taken their toll, not just physically but mentally. He seemed hesitant to attempt the daring dribbles and quick turns that were his trademark, perhaps fearing another breakdown. The fluid, joyful style of play was replaced by a more cautious and predictable approach. He was no longer the player who could single-handedly change a game. Instead, he was often a peripheral figure, struggling to make an impact. The pressure of being a Galactico at Real Madrid is unlike anything else in football. Every performance is scrutinized under a microscope by the demanding fans and a critical media. Hazard was carrying the weight of a massive transfer fee and the expectation of being Cristiano Ronaldo's successor. When he failed to deliver the magical moments that were expected of him week in, week out, the criticism grew louder. It created a difficult environment for a player already battling his own body. Hope began to fade, both for the fans and likely for Hazard himself, that he would ever be able to replicate his Chelsea heroics in the famous white shirt. In his 4 seasons at the club, he made just 76 appearances and scored only 7 goals. These are statistics that would have been unthinkable for a player of his caliber just a few years earlier. He became a symbol of a high-profile transfer that simply didn't work out. While he was part of a squad that won major trophies, including the Champions League and 2 La Liga titles, his personal contribution was minimal. He was largely a spectator to the team's success, a painful reality for a player who was used to being the star of the show. The weight of the crown had proven too heavy to bear. As Hazard's struggles with injuries and form continued, his role in the team diminished significantly. He went from being the club's marquee signing to, well, a fringe player. Manager Carlo Ancelotti, who replaced Zidane, had other, more reliable options on the wings. Young Brazilian players like Vinicius Jr. and Rodrigo stepped up and seized their opportunities. They were fast, direct, and crucially, they were consistently fit and available. They quickly became the new stars of the team, forming a deadly partnership with Karim Benzema and leading Madrid to glory. Hazard, the man who was supposed to be the leader of the attack, found himself pushed further and further down the pecking order. His appearances became increasingly rare. Often he would be an unused substitute, watching from the bench as his teammates celebrated important victories. On the few occasions he was given a chance, he looked like a player desperately trying to find his old self, but failing. The spark was gone. The team had learned to play and win without him, and his presence was no longer essential. It must have been an incredibly difficult and humbling experience for a player who had been the focal point of every team he had ever played for. He was a world-class talent stuck on the sidelines, becoming a forgotten man at the world's biggest club. The situation eventually became untenable for both the player and the club. Real Madrid were paying a huge salary to a player who was barely contributing, while Hazard was spending the prime years of his career watching from the stands. There was a growing sense that his time in Madrid was coming to an end. The media was filled with speculation about his future, but his high wages and poor injury record made it difficult for other clubs to consider a move for him. He was trapped in a golden cage, unable to play and unable to leave. The dream move had completely soured. In the summer of 2023, a year before his contract was due to expire, Hazard and Real Madrid came to a mutual agreement to terminate his contract. It was a sad but necessary end to a disastrous chapter in his career. His departure was quiet and unceremonious, a stark contrast to the massive fanfare that had greeted his arrival 4 years earlier. He left the club having failed to live up to the immense expectations, his time in Spain defined by disappointment and what might have been. The slow march to the exit was finally over, but it left big questions about what would come next for the Belgian star. After leaving Real Madrid, the football world waited with bated breath to see what Eden Hazard's next move would be. There were, plenty of rumours swirling. Talk of interest from different leagues, including a possible move to Major League Soccer in the United States, or maybe even a lucrative deal in Saudi Arabia. Most people assumed he'd try to find a new club, somewhere he could perhaps rediscover his love for the game and hopefully end his career on a more positive note. But as it turned out, Hazard had a different plan altogether. He took his time, carefully considered his options, and most importantly, listened to his own heart. The fire that had once burned so brightly for football had started to fade, and he simply wasn't prepared to carry on playing for the wrong reasons. On October 10th, 2023, at the age of just 32, Eden Hazard announced his retirement from professional football. In a heartfelt statement, he explained that his decision was actually quite simple. He had stopped having fun. The joy he once felt on the pitch was, well, gone. He said he no longer enjoyed the daily grind of training, and since he wasn't playing much anymore, it was time to stop. Crucially, he made it very clear that he had no interest in moving somewhere just to earn more money. This decision was about his own happiness and well-being. A brave choice, really, in a sport where players often carry on for as long as they possibly can. This move followed his retirement from international football, which he had announced after the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. He'd captained Belgium in that tournament, but it ended in disappointment as the team was knocked out in the group stage. After that, he decided it was time to step aside and let the next generation of Belgian players have their chance. That was, you could say, the first sign that he was beginning to wind down his career. His final years had been so challenging that the passion which had driven him to the very top was, in the end, extinguished. He wanted to spend more time with his family and enjoy life away from the immense pressures of professional football. His retirement was met with a mixture of sadness and understanding. Fans were sad that they would no longer get to see his moments of magic, but they respected his honesty and his courage to walk away on his own terms. He didn't want to become a player who was just going through the motions. Hazard retired with his legacy as a Premier League great fully intact, choosing to be remembered for the joyful, mesmerizing player he was at his peak, rather than the struggling figure he had become in his final years. It was honestly a mature and dignified end to a wonderful, if sometimes complicated, career. Eden Hazard wasn't just a star at club level, he was the captain and creative heart of the Belgian national team for well over a decade. He was, without question, the brightest talent in what everyone called Belgium's golden generation, a group of exceptionally gifted players that included Kevin De Bruyne, Romelu Lukaku, Vincent Kompany and Thibaut Courtois. This was a team that for quite a while promised so much, and they were even ranked #1 in the world for a long time. Hazard was absolutely central to their identity, the player who could unlock any defense with a moment of individual brilliance. He wore the captain's armband with pride and led Belgium to their best ever World Cup finish in 2018, when they secured third place in Russia. During that tournament, he was honestly sensational, arguably one of the best players on display. His performances, especially in the quarter-final victory against Brazil, were a showcase of his incredible talent on the world stage. He was the leader, the inspiration, and really the symbol of a nation's footballing hopes. With 126 caps and 33 goals for his country, he established himself as one of Belgium's all-time greatest players. For years, he carried the expectations of a nation on his shoulders. However, the golden generation was never quite able to capture the major international trophy that everyone felt they were capable of winning. The 2022 World Cup in Qatar was seen as, well, the last chance for this group of players to achieve glory together. Unfortunately, the tournament ended in bitter disappointment, with the team failing to get out of their group. Hazard, who was no longer at his physical peak, struggled to make a significant impact. Not long after their elimination, he announced his retirement from international football, marking the symbolic end of an era for the national team. His departure, followed by the retirement of other key figures and a change in coach, really signaled a major transition for Belgian football. The team that competed in Euro 2024 was a very different one, undergoing a generational change and looking to build a new identity without its former talisman. Hazard's decision to step away was a recognition that his time at the top was over and that it was time for new leaders to emerge. While the golden generation may be remembered for not winning a major tournament, their legacy is in putting Belgian football firmly on the world map, with Eden Hazard as their shining star. Since hanging up his boots, Eden Hazard has been enjoying a much quieter life away from the relentless demands of professional football. He's focused on his family and, rediscovered the simple joy of playing the game without any pressure. Fans were absolutely delighted to see him return to the pitch in June 2024, not for a professional club, but for a good cause. He took part in Soccer Aid, a major charity match held at his old home, Stamford Bridge. Playing for the World 11 team, he looked relaxed, happy, and showed flashes of the old magic that made him so beloved. He even scored a brilliant free kick, much to the delight of the Chelsea fans in attendance. That appearance at Stamford Bridge was honestly a wonderful moment. It felt like a proper homecoming. The supporters gave him a hero's welcome, chanting his name just like they used to. It was a reminder of the incredible bond he still shares with the club and its fans. Seeing him play with a smile on his face again, free from the weight of expectation that burdened him in Madrid, was heartwarming for everyone watching. It showed that while his professional career was over, his love for the game itself hadn't completely disappeared. He could now enjoy it on his own terms, for fun and for charity. His connection with Chelsea remains incredibly strong. In July 2024, the club announced that Hazard would be returning in a special one-off capacity. He was brought back to act as a tour guide at the Cobham training ground for a lucky competition winner, To promote the event, he was pictured wearing the club's new 2024/2025 home kit. While it was just for a promotional campaign, the sight of him back in Chelsea blue sent a wave of excitement and nostalgia through the fan base. It really highlighted that he will always be a part of the Chelsea family, a legend who is welcomed back with open arms. These post-retirement activities show a different side of Hazard. He's no longer the superstar carrying the hopes of a club or a nation, but a beloved figure enjoying the legacy he built. He seems content with his decision to retire, embracing a more relaxed lifestyle while still staying connected to the football world in a positive way. Whether he is playing in a charity match or making a guest appearance at his old club, he continues to bring joy to the fans who followed his incredible career. It's a fitting next chapter for a player who always played the game with a sense of fun. Reflecting on Eden Hazard's career is, really, to tell a story of two halves, one of breathtaking brilliance and another of heartbreaking decline. At his very best at Chelsea, he was simply unstoppable, a true magician with the ball at his feet. He was the kind of player who made you fall in love with football, a genius who combined skill, power and intelligence to create moments of pure art. His legacy at Stamford Bridge is absolutely secure. He'll forever be remembered as one of the club's greatest ever players, a king who brought so much success and joy to the fans. His 7 years in London were honestly a masterclass in attacking football. The move to Real Madrid, which should have been the crowning glory of his career, instead became a bit of a cautionary tale. It serves as a powerful reminder of just how fragile a football career can be. A single injury can, change everything, and the immense pressure at the world's biggest clubs can be crushing. His struggles in Spain were not due to a lack of talent or desire, but a cruel combination of physical misfortune and the immense weight of expectation. It's a sad chapter in his story, but it doesn't erase the brilliance that came before it. It simply adds a layer of complexity to his journey. So, what can we learn from his story? We learn that joy is a vital ingredient for success. Hazard himself said he retired because he stopped having fun. When the passion faded, he had the courage to walk away, prioritizing his own happiness over money or fame. This is, I think, an important lesson in a world where athletes are often pushed to their absolute limits. His journey also highlights the human side of footballers. They're not machines, they're people who face physical and mental challenges just like anyone else. His story is both inspiring and sad, a tale of incredible highs and devastating lows. Ultimately, Eden Hazard's legacy should be defined by the joy he brought to millions. Fans will remember the exhilarating dribbles, the impossible goals, and that infectious smile. They'll remember the player who, at his best, was a force of nature, capable of winning games all by himself. While his time in Madrid was a disappointment, it cannot overshadow the years of genius he gave us in the Premier League and for the Belgian national team. He was a true entertainer, a magician who made the difficult look easy. And that is really how he should be remembered, as one of the most gifted and exciting footballers of his generation.